Welcome back to Growth Without Referrals. Today I'm joined by Anna Felix of Stronghold Wealth Partners. Anna works closely with women who are business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals, helping them make more confident financial decisions, especially around retirement, protection strategies, and long-term planning. Part of her work also focuses on education and helping clients feel more informed and in control of their financial future. Anna, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, Anna, before we get into the business side of things, I always like to start with the person behind the work. Can you walk me back to the beginning a bit? How did you first get into financial services, and what drew you into working with clients in this space?
Yes, well, it was actually a traumatic event that brought me into this industry. I had always been into education and languages, speak several languages, was an interpreter. So finances was never kind of on the scope. And in 2010, I lost my husband. And becoming a widow is what got me in this industry. And so I say today that, it was a very painful, stressful, difficult time, but it really helped me identify an area that I later realized needed a lot of help, and that was women in finance. And so my experience in, being in a really stressful situation, needing some answers rather quickly, and not being the typical financial advisor's ideal client in that I didn't have a lot of money, I had a lot of debt, and I really needed to get started over at age 42. Conversations were helping me realize that the traditional financial setup wasn't going to be a good setup for me. And when I had an advisor, the last one I met with three, and the last one said, Anna, I don't really have time for your questions. And what you really need to do is marry a rich guy. That is when I knew that something had to change. And it was literally, after excusing myself from that appointment, walking to my car. And I thought, just from a human standpoint, I would have handled that conversation differently. And so I'm going to do a deep dive into finances because obviously I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. And that's what led me to realize that there was such a need. And as I started sharing with my community and friends that knew my situation, I started sharing with them, things that I was finding in my research, and they were not aware of those things either. And so I thought, wow, I'm going to be doing this for myself. I'm going to set up my own plan, but my friends and other people in the community need to know that. And so it became
Mm.
clear that the message was maybe you should start something, maybe you should do this. And so that's what got me into financial services.
Wow. And first of all, Anna, I'm sorry for your loss. And then
Appreciate it.
I'm very disappointed in the insensitive comment that financial advisor had what he
Yeah.
said. That was not good. So I completely understand and applaud what you're doing.
Thank
The
you.
question I have, what were some of the biggest lessons you learned in your early years in financial services that still influence how you work today?
Wow, there were a lot of them. I had a lot of growing to do and a lot of learning to do. So I'm going to pick two. There were lots of them. The first one I learned is so important is to always be a student. So, you know, obviously in the beginning there was so many things to learn, but today, over a decade later, there are still things to learn, still nuances, still better and ways to reach out to people. Times are always changing. And so I have learned that there is no arriving at this, right? Like it's a constant journey, and I'm always learning. And when I keep that student hat on, I find that, it benefits me and it benefits my clients really well. And the second thing I've learned is it's not about me ever. It's about the clients. And so in the moments when, I'm walking in a room of, maybe mostly men in this industry, or, maybe people that I don't know, and I'm there to connect and share the message and see what I can do to help. And I'm not always like the most outgoing person. And there are moments when it's like, oh, why am I doing this? Or, you know, this is hard. But I have to remember that it's not about me. It's about the people in that room that I could
Hmm.
help. So when I always keep them in mind and just keep moving forward, because the work I do is so important for folks and the message really needs to get out there. And so I don't want to let myself and maybe my thought of the day or the way I'm feeling get in the way of that. And that has helped me to continue to grow through the years.
And a great perspective. And I like that it's not about you, it's about your clients. And that's so important because financial services is a trust heavy industry. And if
Mhm.
they know that you really have their best interest at heart, not Anna's interest at heart, they know that. They can feel that the way you present things, the way you talk to them. So a lot of firms in financial services grow through relationships and referrals, and that's usually the foundation. How has that played out in your business?
Well, that has definitely been the case in my business as well. Relationships with other professionals that my clients need, such as, accountants, CPAs, real estate professionals, and also estate planning attorneys. There is definitely a role in that because my clients need those services. They also need my services. And so having those relationships with professionals has been, very, very helpful. And for sure, referrals have also played a part because what I do is pretty unique in the industry and
Mhm.
my business model is unique. And so people want to share unique things, right? Like we share restaurants and movies and all those type of things with friends all the time. And so there is definitely a component of that when a woman feels like, wow, this was not as stressful as I thought. This was pretty easy. I understand what I'm doing. I'm really comfortable with what's going on. And so I definitely want to share it with my community. So I've been blessed that that has definitely been a component, of being able to work with women and their friends and family members.
Okay. And Anna, have you found that education plays a role in building that trust?
Yes, absolutely. Just as and I think the reason I'm in the industry was my need to be educated around this, right? Like I didn't feel like I had enough information. And so I was obligated to go and find it for myself. And so it's interesting though today that there is a lot of information. Like it isn't the
Mhm.
lack necessarily of information, but it's the lack of knowing how does this particular thing apply to my situation. So often, you can get financial information on TikTok, let's say, not my favorite platform, but a lot of people are successful and they're sharing information on TikTok. But knowing if that actually transfers into something that's going to be useful for yourself is another thing. And it's often hard to know, is that just a gimmick? Is that something that could really be helpful for me? Is that something that applies to me? Would it be helpful for me? And so it's a little bit beyond just getting the information, but the education part is what is it that is going to help me get to my goals? And that's why creating the relationship with a potential client, from the moment we meet is really important because I don't even know if some of these things are good for them until I get all of their information, until I know
Right.
what the goals are, and until I know what's happened before and what are we working with. And then that kind of picture evolves as to what's really going to work or not. So it's that information combined with how does it fit, and oftentimes there's information out there that's taken out of context, and so you might hear a blurb about doing a Roth conversion is just to pick something out of the air, is something that you can really do to save taxes. Well, that is true by itself. That is true. But if that's the best thing for a particular person is a different thing. And so you've got to be able to know how to apply this. And I feel like nowadays there's just so much information. The big challenge is how am I going to use it? And is it really something that I should be doing? Or is it just, the next shiny object that's out there?
Okay. Our podcast is called Growth Without Referrals.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, outside of referrals, what are some of the ways you've tried to grow your practice?
Yeah, so I've done a fair amount of networking and being a partner in the community. And so I am a
Hmm.
part of a variety of groups that are helping the community in different ways, and that has brought some growth to my business as well because, like, for example, one of the groups that I'm associated with work with seniors and all aspects of senior life and things that they need to deal with. And so by being there, I am able to help protect them. They are a group that face a lot of fraud and things that a lot of people are after them. It's crazy, but they are a very easy target often. And so, being in that community, being there to serve as different things happen, as children have to take on caregiving. There's a lot of little components that come to that. And so that is one of the groups that I have become a part of and have been able to, help that sector and their family and their families. And that has been, something that's been very helpful for my business as well.
I would imagine. And again, Anna, that goes back to building trust.
Absolutely.
Because when you're in those situations and people can tell if you're authentic, right?
Yes.
And that absolutely builds trust. And so I applaud that. A question I have is what did you try without referrals that a way to get business that didn't work out the way you thought it would?
Oh, I've tried, a variety of different platforms, reaching out, doing a lot of posting on different platforms. Probably is the biggest thing that I tried doing. Purchasing leads for just a short period of time, and those things. And it's interesting because in this industry, a lot of different things work well for different professionals. And I think you just have to find what works for you. I mean, every personality is different, your outreach is different, the people that you're working with have a different mindset. And so I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think it's just something that you have to do. You have to try different things and see, does my message resonate with people on this platform? Up until this time, I have not found Facebook to be one that resonates with my message very well. So,
Hmm.
that's okay. I've identified that. And so I work on different platforms. But it's important to try because you're not going to know until you try it. And so I think there's a little bit of, trial and error in that as I'm getting my message out, I'm sharing it, where is it resonating with folks and where am I seeing that I'm able to help the most as possible.
Okay, absolutely. And Anna, you worked with a wide range of clients over the years. From your experience, what are some of the most common financial mistakes you see people make?
Well, I would say that one of them is not knowing your numbers. So you don't know how much is coming in and you don't know how much is going out every month. And so often when, someone says, I want to start putting away money for the future. And in order to do that, we need to know, how much income do you have that we could put towards a plan like that? Interesting that usually the higher earners have even less of an idea of where all their money is going. And so, I start to help them to track that and to pay attention you know, because it seems like the more money you have coming in, unless you have a direct direction for your money, like I say, you need to provide your money instruction. It needs to go here. If I'm going to be saved, I mean, even if you're not sure what you're going to invest it in, but you need to put it in a place where it's not in the realm of where it's easy to access to spend. And this also goes to your spending habits. And maybe that's another thing that's tied to that is knowing your spending habits, but then knowing your numbers. And so if those two things can come together, it sets up a platform whereby you can then say, okay, this is how much extra income I have on a monthly basis. Now, what direction am I going to give it to start to plan for my future? And the other thing that's always super important is to have, and this goes across all folks, I don't care who you are, what you're doing, how much you're earning, you need to have an emergency fund. Ideally, that would be about 6 to 9 months of your living expenses in a place where if anything happens, you can, have that money set aside, because that covers, the unexpected repairs that come up in the house or the car, all of those things. And it really keeps you away from getting into debt so quickly, because that's what happens when we don't have an emergency fund. Then a few things happen, and then we start to accumulate debt right away. So I would say that knowing your numbers, know your spending style, and then really give your money a direction as to putting it somewhere where you can start to accumulate it, and then you can give it further direction.
Okay. That's a great wisdom piece right there. And Anna, let's say you have a client who comes to you who feels overwhelmed or uncertain about their financial future. What advice would you give that client?
Yeah. So I always say, and I understand this because most clients come with a certain amount of stress. We are just going to discover where things are at. We're going to start where we need to start, and we're just going to start uncovering those things. And I'll ask a series of questions, and we'll start to lay out all the pieces. It's kind of like creating a puzzle. And there's never any judgment. Like myself, I started over at 42. Last week, I spoke with a recent divorcee. She's 59 and really feeling the need to start over. The path that we're on, the things that have happened to us, it's just part of our journey and our experience. There's no judgment at all. It's just, where are we now? What is it that we can do? And it's a methodical putting pieces together. Are there any things that are like blaringly important that we need to handle first and foremost? We'll handle those. If there's things that, we don't need to address for another 6 months or so, then we'll create a timeline, and we'll just start to, check those things off. And I jokingly say, it's like eating an elephant. It's one bite at a time. So, it might seem like a massive thing, but if we just start to do it little by little, piece by piece, it all starts to come together, and it reduces the anxiety that comes with that.
Okay. Financial services world has changed a lot in the past several years. Clients have more access to information, more tools, and more opinions than ever before. From your perspective, what's changed the most?
I feel like what's changed the most is people are using AI and other tools to get information. And that's fine, except that AI doesn't understand all the nuances of your situation. And so it's a great tool. And I've had some clients, I love it because they'll come back with some questions. And I know that that's not a question that they would have come up on their own. And so
Right.
it's good. They're researching, they're doing those things. And that's okay. But again, going to the point, if you don't put the person's whole situation in these search engines, then it's not going to be able to give you a really complete view of what that is. And so I feel like we are sharing our clients with these platforms as a place where they're going to go get information. And I always encourage, clients, I'll direct them to books or other places for them to do some research so that they really feel confident about the things that we're going to be doing. But again, I feel like, I will address that immediately, like, check it out, look at it in AI, whatever you want to do, but understand that there may be times when that information isn't nuanced with your situation. Like you're not 59 and a half yet, or you don't have access to this account yet for this or that reason, that those platforms are not going to remind you of. And so that's where having a trusted advisor is super important. So I feel like they're great tools, and I certainly think that they can help in a lot of ways, but you still need to make sure that all of your situation is being taken into account. And that's impossible unless you're dealing with a human.
Exactly. And Anna, what trends do you think financial advisors need to be paying attention to right now?
Well, as I mentioned, AI is this thing in the room with us. But the other thing that I feel that I see with my clients is we have another generation coming that is a little more in tune with their money. And I think they've been seeing their parents struggle and go through a lot of things, and they don't really want to be on that same train that they see their parents on, and that's great. But we also need to remember that they need help as well. And so it's something that I'm really looking to as I work with seniors. I'm helping that generation, and then their children need help, and now the grandchildren need help as well. So there's really a lot of family that are involved that we can really help. And some of the planning that we're doing, like with grandparents, is going to affect the children and the grandchildren. So all of those things need to be taken into account. And often those three generations communicate differently, and they want to have, they receive information differently. And so it requires us to communicate, find out, how do they, most of my younger clients, they will text me when they have questions. Their parents call me. Grandparents typically call as well. So, we have to be up on, how can we help each of them deliver information in the best way that they take it in, because it's an important conversation, and ideally I want all of them to be talking together at some point in time, but we have to start that conversation often and make sure that we're doing it on platforms and in ways that they are going to assimilate it well.
Okay, I love it. Anna, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and perspective. For listeners who want to learn more about your work or connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, so on my website is the best way to reach out to me. So it's Anna Felix, ANNA, Felix, FELIX.com. You can just schedule a time for us to talk, and we'll start the conversation and see if I can help you, and if we mutually feel comfortable with each other, and then we take it from there.
Perfect. And for our listeners, I will be putting Anna's contact information in the description below this podcast, so please reference that too. Anna, thanks for joining us. This was a strong discussion.
Thank you for having me.